Hi, this is Jerry, who has many years investment experience. Today, I want to share one biggest news in coffee industry. 2 days ago, global coffee giant Starbucks announced a strategic partnership with Chinese asset management firm Boyu Capital. The two parties will establish a joint venture to jointly operate Starbucks' retail business in the Chinese market. According to the agreement, Boyu Capital will hold up to 60% of the joint venture, while Starbucks will retain a 40% stake and continue to be the owner and licensor of the Starbucks brand and intellectual property, granting the newly formed joint venture its rights. Based on an enterprise value of approximately $4 billion, about 28.48 billion RMB, excluding cash and debt, Boyu will acquire its corresponding equity. At the same time, Starbucks globally expects the total value of its Chinese retail business to exceed $13 billion in the future. This value consists of three parts. The equity transfer proceeds from Boyu's controlling stake in the joint venture, Starbucks' retained equity value in the joint venture, and future royalties and operating income to be paid to Starbucks over the next 10 years or more. In the announcement, Starbucks CEO Brian Niccol clearly expressed his expectations for the strategic cooperation. Boyu's local market experience and expertise will help accelerate Starbucks' expansion in China, especially in smaller cities and emerging regions. Currently, Starbucks has approximately 8,000 stores in China. The new joint venture will continue to have its headquarters in Shanghai, and both parties have committed to gradually expanding the number of Starbucks stores in China to 20,000 in the future. After 26 years in China, Starbucks' development in the Chinese market has gone through many twists and turns, and its sale of its Chinese business has always sparked market attention and speculation. Now that Starbucks China has officially changed hands, let's discuss why this coffee giant has reached this point today. First, let's review the development history of Starbucks in China. On January 11, 1999, Starbucks opened its first store in China, and Starbucks' history in China can be divided into 4 stages. First stage, market cultivation, 1999-2009. Store expansion. The first store opened in Beijing's Guomao area. Initially, the focus was on high-tier cities, and store growth was slow. Market strategy. Starbucks established a high-end brand image through the third space concept, targeting expatriates and students, but the company was in a long-term loss. Second stage, in-depth development, 2010-2017. Store expansion. After 2010, expansion accelerated with over 500 stores added each year in 2016-2017, reaching 1,540 stores by 2017. Market share. By 2017, Starbucks held a 42% share of China's freshly brewed coffee market, becoming the absolute leader. Revenue performance. In 2017, revenues grew more than 20% year-on-year, with more than 400 orders per store per day and an average customer spend of over 40 RMB. Third stage, rapid expansion, 2018-2024. Store expansion. By 2018, Starbucks had over 3,500 stores, reaching 7,600 by 2024, and expected to grow to 7,128 by Q3 2025. Revenue and profit. In fiscal year 2023, revenue was 3.082 billion, accounting for 8.57% of global sales. However, Q3 2025 saw only 790 million in revenue from China, and same-store sales growth was weak. Market share. Decline. Market share dropped from 42% in 2017 to 14% by 2024, as local brands like Luckin Coffee emerged and squeezed market space. Fourth stage, strategic adjustment, 2025 present. Since 2024, Starbucks has faced a decline in global revenue and same-store sales. Even the US market, which contributes over 75% of revenue, has seen a downturn. However, the Chinese market has had several small increases. In 2025, Starbucks began to see a performance recovery. On October 30th, 2025, Starbucks released its Q4 results for fiscal year 2025, ending September 28th, 2025. The report showed global revenue of $37.3 billion, a 3% increase year-on-year. Q4 revenue was $9.6 billion, up 5%, and same-store sales increased 1%, marking the first growth in 7 quarters. For the Chinese market, Starbucks China achieved revenue of $3,105 billion in fiscal year 2025, a 5% year-on-year increase. Q4 revenue reached $831.6 million, a 6% increase, achieving growth for 4 consecutive quarters. Despite this, Starbucks still reached the point of selling its Chinese business. Why? First, Starbucks educated China's coffee market. I remember the first time I went to Starbucks when I started working. I was struck by the elegant environment, the rich aroma of coffee, and the friendly baristas. Since then, I couldn't stop. Almost all my coffee moments were spent in Starbucks. I can say that Starbucks accompanied my career. Back then, my annual income was only $30,000, but I would visit Starbucks many times a year. However, by 2025, my income reached $60,000, but I hardly went to Starbucks anymore. There are several reasons, and I think this is why Starbucks China ended up where it is today. First, the third space concept that Starbucks promoted has lost its appeal after decades of development. Now, many cafes offer quieter and more comfortable spaces. Starbucks's third space has become quite noisy and an environment that people don't want to stay in for long. For example, many small coffee shops offer much better environments than Starbucks. Second, after years of cultivation, Chinese coffee drinkers' taste has gradually improved, but Starbucks coffee quality hasn't seen much improvement. You can find better tasting coffee at almost any coffee shop on the street. This explains why consumers today prefer to drink better coffee in quieter environments instead of Starbucks, especially for coffee lovers like me. Some coffee brands, like KFC Coffee or Luckin Coffee, I think, are even better than Starbucks, but the price of Luckin Coffee is only 1/3 of Starbucks. As a consumer, how would you choose? Third, the economic downturn. In such a macroeconomic environment, people's spending on coffee has inevitably decreased. Many consumers either opt for cheaper coffee or drink it at home to save money. This explains why Luckin Coffee has surpassed Starbucks in market share, store numbers, and revenue in China. This is a huge challenge brought on by the macroeconomy, especially for high-priced brands like Starbucks. They can't drastically lower their prices to compete, so their sales have sharply decreased, and the sale of the Chinese business has become inevitable. Actually, I have a lot of personal feelings for Starbucks. Besides accompanying my career, I was also impressed by the charisma of Starbucks' founder. However, every great company faces decline, especially in times of economic downturn, and it becomes even harder for businesses. I hope Starbucks can weather this crisis. That's all for today. See you next time.